Welcome to the Jeff and Alex podcast. I am Jeff Hilimire, and with my friend Alex Gonzalez, we explore topics that help you be your best self. And we also get to chat with some great guests. So join us now on the Jeff and Alex podcast.
Hello and happy new year to everyone from the Jeff and Alex podcast. I'm Alex Gonzalez here with Jeff Hilimire, and happy new year, Jeff. How you doing?
Happy New Year to you, Alex. I got to say, I'm really happy to be in a new year.
I think this is probably the most anticipated new year that anybody, and you and I have lived through, the going into 99 to 2000, then with the Prince song and everything. But I think this is what people have just been waiting for. So, so looking forward to the 2021 and a fresh start.
Yeah, agreed. I'm pumped about this new year. And to your point, like, I don't know that I've ever been ready to just shake off a year and jump into the new one.
Absolutely.
So I was thinking, and I'd love for you to tell me, as you think about lessons learned, I think we're both reflective on experience and trying to learn from experience. And so 2020, gosh, there were so many things that happened to both of us this year, and certainly to everybody. Is there a thing or two that you're thinking that you've learned or that you're going to apply to this upcoming year?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's probably a couple things. The first thing I would say that and this gets I'm thinking around the time back in March and April, as COVID was really taking hold, and then getting pretty much kind of my business hat on, and the economy just stopped or business just froze, and look, my whole world is so centered around innovation, and I remember thinking, is this going to just really freeze innovation in its tracks, and people are going to just kind of go into their shells and move forward? And one thing I realized is that innovation actually does not stop for anybody. And if there's a lesson definitely from this year, is if anything, it accelerated at such a pace, and I think we all could see it. I mean, now it caused some issues. It definitely caused some devastation economically for some businesses, as some companies gone bankrupt and so forth. But some of that was not because of it was because of the demand pressures, but it also was that we accelerated innovation. Things accelerated so quickly. And retail, the face of retail probably changed overnight, even though it was destined to be there over the next 10 years. What happened to the big box stores and all that accelerated. We're seeing it in the digital and the media business, and that whole model, which is still shaking itself out, just accelerated. And so for me, there's definitely a massive lesson about innovation stops for no one. And not out of any one person saying this is what we're going to do. It's just it's a way the economy, consumers, and all behave. And by the way, it has other impacts in terms of also. So coming into this year, how do you keep that mentality of being dynamic and constantly driving change and being nimble and seizing or embracing opportunity? Because if you don't, you might get left behind, and there's real ramifications to that with jobs and so forth and whatnot. But the other part of it too is that how do you also help entrepreneurs embrace that and take advantage of that as well too, in terms of you pivot. So I think that element, that in all environments, whether it's negative things are happening in the world, or even when not so negative things are happening in the world, how do you use innovation as a tool to move forward, and also recognizing it's not going to stop. So you got to kind of keep moving forward on that.
Yeah. And I think you said something earlier that I think is really interesting, in that most of the innovation that I saw, including in the businesses that I run, were things that were likely going to need to happen. Right. And this just accelerated that. Right. And so to your point, like with e-commerce and delivery, here's a good example. The other day, we got Mellow Mushroom, and which is a client of Dragon Army's. But they never delivered before. at least
That's
the
right.
the ones near us, and they deliver now. So now there's been plenty of times when we're like, not because of a pandemic, but we just were like, well, we can't get out, so we're gonna have to deliver. Oh, we can't have mellow mushroom, right? And so now
Right.
they figured out delivery because they had to. And so, but for the things that you're working on, because you're always, I find you to be as innovative as anybody that I know, from various lenses, right?
Yeah.
Are there things you're going to apply this coming year based on innovating, or have the things you're working on needed to innovate?
Look, I think it's just accelerating what it is. I mean, I will tell you in the entrepreneurism realm is definitely helping entrepreneurs, and particularly in our community here in Atlanta. How do we help bring our entrepreneurs to the full success, and particularly inclusive entrepreneurism? One thing, this is maybe to, just kind of on the side here, but it kind of relates to the topic from an entrepreneurism perspective. But one of the things that has occurred is we're seeing significant impact for entrepreneurs over this past year that are Black, Latino, or women. In fact, there's just an article in the Wall Street Journal talking about the impact of women during this past year. So I believe that. So some of my work is just how do we continue accelerating, particularly making our community the most inclusive from entrepreneurism, and of course it's socially good, but it's frankly needed to be able to drive the pace of innovation, because we need everybody really at the table. We need our entrepreneurs and our leaders of innovation to really be at the table, and to really be able to have the tools and the capital and be empowered to be able to lead their businesses, to be able to bring their ideas forward, because that's how you maximize the changes in this world they're going to take from a holistic perspective. So that's one. But the second thing, Jeff, I mean, you know, whether it's Disruptor Studio or whether it's the books or the stuff we talk about, that mindset of thinking innovatively is so important right now. And look, the stuff that's happened in 2020, there's going to be ramifications in 2021, 22, 23, even beyond just the COVID impact, but also just the impact in terms of how business works and the pace of it. And I think continuing to understand the lessons of how people, and we just talked about restaurants, you talked about mellow mushroom, who some people would say, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense they went to delivery. But someone I've had in Disruptor Studio before, Ford Fry, how he took his high-end restaurants to all of a sudden be able to do an incredible job doing curbside service and delivery and all that, and pivot and still maintain the brand integrity of what they are. Those are things to continue to explore. And so, I still think there's, for me, there's this purpose I have to continue to kind of relay those lessons to the world, because that mental nimbleness is part of what drives innovation. So I think those are the two things I would take forward. How do we help our entrepreneurs, particularly inclusive entrepreneurship? But the second thing, continuing to build that leadership muscle about being innovative, flexible, dynamic, and transformative.
Yeah, I love that.
How about you, Jeff? What's a lesson that you got from 2020? I know there's probably many, but what kind of stood out?
Yeah, the thing that rises to the top for me as I reflect on this past year, and wanting to be more purposeful about in 2021 is focusing more on fewer things, and really leaning in deeply to the few things that I really want to pay attention to and make an impact on. When I talk about purpose, I talk about then the lens that I apply my purpose to, which is sort of three focus areas. It's my family, it's work, and then doing good. And so what I want to try to do is focus more on fewer things. And I think that's the trick with entrepreneurship or just leadership in general, is that you can always find yourself stretched too thin and saying yes to things maybe you shouldn't. And when havoc and chaos reigns like it did this past year, you really realize that time is precious. And so for me, I'm going to try to be even more purposeful about the things that I'm doing. This podcast being one, right? Like I want to make sure that we're
good,
doing
we have
it.
like a 20-year, contract with each other. So it better be
essentially lifetime.
Exactly.
So yeah, like that's an example. Like I want to make sure that I have time for this, that I'm putting the work in, that we're doing a good job, right? And I think that like I could apply that to family as well. Like I'm trying hard to make sure that I'm embracing this amazing time when I get to be with my kids all the time, right?
Yeah,
There's challenges with that. Like I'm hoping no one knocks on the door right now and, and interrupts this. But at the same time, I know once it goes away, it'll probably never come back again. Even if I work from home
right.
more often, they're going to go back to school, right? And so I think just looking at that and focusing more is where I'm gonna really make sure that I'm purposeful about in 2021.
And do you see that as a so one? I would, by the way, I 100% agree with you. I think that if anything that came out, I agree. This deliberateness that
Yeah.
comes from this, both in terms of a pragmatic part of it, like, wow, I've had this time at home and all that, so I could be more specific. And I know for some people, by the way, it actually created more expansion, right? It created a little bit more chaos too,
Mm-hmm.
if they've worked from home. So there's a lot of different variables, but also just being appreciative of time and the value of it.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably where you're going for from the macro perspective. And so let me be really deliberate in what I do in my life,
Mm-hmm.
because life is precious. So is that part of a big part of your kind of centering of
I
your
think,
reasoning for doing that?
yeah, I think deliberate's a good point. And I think that, for me, as we've talked before, I think on previous episodes, like we should be focusing on the things in terms of our businesses and the things we're working on that only we can do, right?
Mm,
It's sort of a thing that I
yep.
tell CEOs, is like, you should be doing the things that only you can do as much as possible. And I think what happened to me this year, there was a period of time where I couldn't work, and that forced me to rely specifically with Dragon Army on Jen Leahy, who I just recently
Right.
promoted to president. But it showed me that there were more things that she can take and run, and that I shouldn't be doing anymore, that she's actually much better at. And so just like taking stock and like, making a list of what are the things that I shouldn't be doing, because other people can do them better, or outsourcing them, or so I think that's, yes, being
Yeah.
deliberate about time because it's so precious, and being focused when I'm in the time. So like again, you don't want to be with your kids more, but yet distracted the whole time. So
Right.
deliberateness, I think, is a good way to look at it.
Well, and in your community side too, that to you is probably, because I know you're the most community centered person I know in terms of everything. As you know, just look up Jeff's LinkedIn, you'll see all the community, all the nonprofits he has started and continues to start. So do you see that as a challenge or even more as an opportunity for you? Because I know you really sincerely, authentically enjoy and appreciate doing more for the community, but do you see that as a challenge or an opportunity to just focus on what you have going on right now?
Yeah, that's a great point. Certainly I see it as an opportunity, but here's what's important to me. It sort of always has been in my life. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it all the way, and I want to do it with quality. I may not be the most creative or brilliant strategist, but if I'm going to put my mind to something, I really want to make sure that I do the work, and that I stick with it and see it through. And so for
Yeah.
me, that does mean saying no to other things. Like, I'm sure like you, I get asked to be part of
Yep.
different community involvements, and it's hard to say no. And so like this year, I think I'm going to drop off on one of the nonprofits I'm involved in, not the ones that I started, but ones that I'm
Right.
on the board of, and focus on the ones that really need my attention. Right. Like,
Right.
I think we talked about this. The Woodruff Art Center that I was on the board of for about a year, they didn't really need me. They've got brilliant people around the table who have experience in the arts or raising that kind of money. And what needs me is sort of things that are launching, or that are really need momentum,
Right.
to get to the leader that then can take it. So yeah, I think deliberateness, and seeing that as an opportunity with community, I think is certainly important. What about you? Is there anything else that you think about as you look forward to this year?
Yeah, probably very related to that. But one thing what I'll mention, that I think is important for everybody to take forward. Then I have this one item that I think relates to what you just said. But there's the reflectiveness you talk about is also comes from having the time and space to be able to reflect as well too. And that was forced upon, not everybody had that luxury as well. Because one thing, obviously, I think a lot of people who watch this and listen to this are in situations where that was all of a sudden they had a lot of space. But we know a lot of people that do not, obviously. But that space to reflect is so critical and powerful, and as you go into a world where it's not going to be forced upon you, and let's hope that it will never be forced upon us like it was this year. But then it's how do we reflect, and how do we force that space and time to be reflective and be thoughtful? I think is important for everybody to take forward. I'm a huge proponent of that for everybody, and businesses and all that to do that. So that's one thing I'll mention. But I think Jeff, kind of to kind of put a bow on what you just mentioned. Definitely this year, and I remember early on, some business leaders kind of looking forward in terms of so many people being at home, particularly working from home and spending more time with family. And again, knowing that there's those who may not have had the opportunity to do so, but time with family and being deliberate about it is something I want to bring forward. And you just mentioned it before. I mean, it's going to be, we know that as much as we would like to spend as much time with our family, we know that as the world opens up and we start traveling and all that, it's going to be difficult too. But one thing I want to bring forward into 21, 22, 23, and forever and ever is being deliberate about time with family. And whether it's simple things as, playing board games or having, now adult kids or college kids together and really making value out of the time together versus just being next to each other.
Yeah.
That to me is so important. And one thing I definitely bring out of last year with all the negativity and everything going on is having family around and not taking that for granted. And again, even in the grander scheme of things, of really being appreciative of having them around, because I know there's a lot of reasons why people aren't around, this past year with everything that's going on. Really cherishing that, and believe me, our family vacations will take on new meaning, but not just into that, but even those weekends or weeknights that we're together, I will definitely value. And I'm sure that's something that I know that's something you kind of mentioned and you will value as well too.
Yeah, it really was interesting this year because not being able to be with certain family members, not being able to be celebrating holidays necessarily with people. I think that you're right. Like just really making sure that you're appreciative of that time, because like you said, like kids are going to go to college, like all these things happen, but this year was really forced on us in 2020 was to be appreciative of that time that when we do get it.
Yeah. You bring up two perspectives. Because obviously with our family unit that have been kind of quarantined together, I'm definitely miss that as people disperse more into the world. So valuing, that kind of core group of our family. But yeah, you bring up a great point too, for extended family that dearly missed, and even friends, and being deliberate about those times, not taking them for granted in terms of being able to connect with people.
Yeah.
Boy, that's something I'm definitely going to take into 21 as well too. So so we could do the show live and have people around us and
right.
so forth. So.
That's the thing, like we've never done this show live.
Exactly. It'll be interesting dynamics. I'm like, I know Jeff wants a bigger dressing room than mine, so we'll deal with all that stuff as we get into it.
I have a complicated writer that is going to have
exactly right.
deliver
Boy, these colored M&Ms. Boy, I just want lobster. That's all, Jeff. But
we can do it.
Well, what is everybody out there? So, what lessons do you take from 2020 into 2021? What are some commitments you're making to yourself? What are lessons you learned? What are they? So, write to us. In on the comments here on if you're watching on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or on our social media channels. As this comes out, we'd love to hear from you and keep the conversation going. And both Jeff and I do sincerely hope that you're having a happy new year as we begin, and you have an incredible 2021 that we all are very much looking forward to. So Jeff, once again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to everyone. And thanks for watching the Jeff and Alex podcast.